When I first came and looked out of the window, I lived on the 7th floor. And beautiful weather. And the view is across to the training ground of Lords. And I repeated myself, I said, this is the icing on the cake, really, as far as housing. And it was sheer good luck that I landed here and was accepted. And so the time spent here was superb.
On the outside it looks great, but there are a lot of issues internally with the building, just as the plumbing, and it's quite an old building.
My understanding was that it was built as an office. There's a number of properties that C&C own that are sheltered schemes that were built originally as office accommodation, but then there was a glut at the time of office accommodation, and so the owner decided to offer it to another organisation or build it out as flats rather than office.
Well, it was built in 1960s, 1968, and it was all instigated by Lord Samuel, who was an inspiration in his time. And sort of post-war, lots of building of large blocks of accommodation, particularly for older people. And they must have just been such a great thing when they opened, for people to be able to go and live in self-contained, supported accommodation.
And they were very functional buildings, and at the time they were good. They were built to 1960s design standards and space standards.
There's a very specific way of building then, lots of concrete frame buildings. Unfortunately, they're very inflexible. So at Dora now we have a number of bed sets which are very small, 32 square metres. That's often the size of somebody's living room. Maybe not in central London, but on the suburbs certainly. So it's very small accommodation. And you've got people that have mobility issues. There might be wheelchair users having to live in a relatively small space.
We've got 202 flats. We've got about 65 one-bed flats, and the rest are studio flats. We've got about, I think, 5 or 6 couples in the one-bed flats. The rest, they've got single persons in them.
I think it's generally the way in a building like this. Yeah, you're just trying to keep things running, and eventually it needs to be addressed in a big way.
We've done some cosmetic work. There's things like the plumbing. You can change the boiler, but you can't change the actual plumbing unless you actually take up all the floors. The roof is, eventually it's wear and tear is coming to the end of its lifespan. There's a lot of things like that it wouldn't be feasible to try and just like patch it up.
All the windows are steel framed windows, so that drafts are pretty bad, and there's not much you can do about it. You try to do sort of temporary measures, but ultimately they need to be all replaced.
And we looked at 3 different things. One was to just do nothing, just carry on as we were, and because of all of those big major spend items, that was going to cost us a lot of money, but we wouldn't gain anything from it apart from just keeping the building ticking along. So residents wouldn't have a better life because they wouldn't have bigger flats or better space standards.
You can't refurbish it. If you refurbish it, all you end up doing is turning smaller flats into slightly larger ones, but you've got the same infrastructure problems. You've got problems with the electrics, the boiler system, the roof, and the corridors will always still be too small. So we had to do something fairly major, and that's why we're having a conversation about redeveloping it. So we've been talking to residents for probably 5 years about what can we do with it.
We first started talking about this, I was still at central office when we started talking about this. I was a housing officer, and that was way back 2007.
I joined C&C 5 years ago, and the talk and the discussion of all of this had been going on for several years before that, but it was shelved because it reached this point of being terribly expensive and nobody really knowing what decision to make on it.
The residents were surveyed in quite some depth, and they came up with some thoughts about what was needed at the time. And they said that they wanted a bigger bathroom, a bigger kitchen, better heating controls, better insulation and ventilation, and a bigger flat generally, a separate bedroom, very clear, I mean right across the board, everybody wanted the same thing. But whatever you do, don't move me away from this great location. This is really important to me. And that's really been stuck in our mind.
The location is, of course, ideal. I've been living in Marylebone for 25 years. So Regent's Park is close, and Primrose Hill maybe. And it's the location is perfect. Transport connections are absolutely fabulous.
We've been challenged that maybe we should just sell this great site to a private developer in its entirety and build housing in a less valuable area for people. We thought about that and said, no. People deserve to live right in the heart of London in one of the best locations. This is their home, this is where they've grown up, and this is where they add value. That's most important.
And one of the outcomes was that we can't not do anything. Something had to be done. And I think maybe some people thought it wouldn't happen because of the long time it's taken.
Soon after my arrival, I heard rumours about they're going to take this building down, and I couldn't believe it. So I, not believing it, of course, I furnished my little studio flat on the 7th floor according to my liking and my needs. But then gradually it became clearer that it is actually a fact that we will have to move out.
When I came here, ostensibly it was for the rest of my days. Then it became apparent there were plans afoot to develop. There's a post office facility next door, and they were hoping to buy that land and extend Dora House in such a way that no one would actually have to move out. It was quite ingenious. There would be lots of dust flying around and wrecking balls, but by and large they were going to build on the back and then move the front people to the back. It was a huge logistical effort was going to take place, but then whoever was going to sell the land either reneged or, I've got to be careful here, but there was a change of plan.
So this was the alternative, and therefore it came as a great shock to the residents when we had to explain to them that the plan had changed.
So that was the only stumbling block, that they had to turn down Plan A and switch to Plan B. That was a surprise.
The trouble with London is it's all about viability. So it's all about making sure everything stacks up. You know, you've got the financial viability, you know, so it's working. But it's also working for the client, the user group, and especially this project, it's so complicated and technical because there's so much going on a relatively small site. It's making sure that they all align and they all work together, which hasn't been that easy.
And that was when we got to the decision of let's take the leap, let's knock it down, let's see how we can do this, knock it down, rebuild it. And as time's gone on over the last 5 years, we've got to the position where we now know what it is we want to do, we know how we can fund it through the sale of the front of the site to fund the back of the site.
And we just want people to come back and be able to have a bigger flat that can support them for the rest of their lives, that care can be delivered if they want it, or they can just lead a great life in a great location right in the heart of London.
You know, the mindset of Central and Cecil is they want to be innovative, they want to do things differently. So going to an architectural practice who haven't got those tramline, thoughts, and have a different vision and a shared vision as well. And I think that was very, very clear from the outset when I joined, was that there was very much a shared vision between Central and Cecil and Ryder.
I've never been involved in anything like this before. It's, you go through your working life and you think, I've done lots of jobs. I've been a telephone engineer and worked all over the place, but I didn't think I'd be involved in something like this. So it's a nice challenge, so as you get sort of towards the end of your working life, it's rewarding as well, because you're dealing with people's lives and just to see the people move and be happy, even just moving now, once they get moved and settled, it's nice. You think, well, they're okay, we can move on to the next person and make,
I suppose there's a time when we will have to look at building a new Dora house, and this is the time.
They'll certainly set a standard and a benchmark for CNC. There's no doubt about that. And my own personal view is it will set a standard across other housing associations, because we aren't just trying to build a block of flats that has standard rooms in it. We're trying to make it a building that is different, a building that's been designed by the tenants and the residents, but actually is something that is special. It will have everything that you would expect to find if you go into a private rented modern flat or buy a modern flat in London. And I think it will be on a par. In fact, I know it will be.